Thank you. Thank you. My stamp work is good. I got a brand new stamp from the PTSA people, people who donated to PTSA. Thank you, thank you. I got a new stamp pad.
Me too.
PTSA.
You got 29, I got 29.
Everybody. So everybody go. Someone might be willing to take
I know, I am.
Oh, you're right.
It's a beat.
Wait. No, you only wrote something and you didn't. So therefore you didn't write it. That means that's good. That's good news.
That's one inch away. Yeah, thank you. I am looking. Here. Somebody getting it.
It's like the coolest thing ever. You don't. All you have to do is like, and it staples.
Yeah.
It's almost.
Oh, so you take that. I can't do this.
The beer sticker on your.
Yeah. Which beer? I don't like this.
He's relatively
You guys have
to Kentucky a couple years ago. Yes, you can actually go to Kentucky. I went to the birthplace of
What do you think?
Oh, he used to hang out over there, but since we're now to the age of Lincoln, he's been No, he just sent back to the corner over here.
Actually, that's right. That just popped up. He said, where'd you get that sticker? It's back here behind you.
Yeah.
Good laugh.
We know. Yes,
Jamie?
Peanut butter? I'm having an allergic reaction. My tongue is
All right. So,
I wouldn't be able to pay your mom.
hello and happy Monday.
Oh.
It's truly happy Monday. Come on. It's good. It's Monday. So it's your restart button. So you however things were, it's now brand new.
What if I wanted them to stay the way?
You know, that's just how life is. You gotta keep going. Alright? Keep swimming. Yeah. Keep swimming, swimming. You know. Yeah. Okay. All right. So now I'm going to have to do a full disclosure for something that changed from what happened a couple years ago to now, as far as the causes of the Civil War. It used to be that a lot of time was spent on it, okay? Now they're just kind of another thing. So in my old textbook, it was 3 chapters on expansion, causes of the Civil War, 2 chapters on the Civil War. Okay, so it's 5 chapters on this one thing. It's now 2. Okay, and I don't take it well. So I am trying to shove all of these things that I'm thinking important into a smaller bag. So when I get crazy, you have to let me know. Okay. So notice I wasn't even allowing myself to be specific as to what we're getting done today. We're getting done a lot of causes of the war. Okay. So, but we start today with this idea of the free soil movement, and we talked about a little bit about it at the end of last period, which was like before a whole bunch of sugar entered your body this weekend and maybe erased some of that information. But does anyone have kind of a little bit of a definition of what this free soil idea was? It can.
That the land that we gained from Mexico would be like slave-free areas.
Okay, so definitely that was part of the idea. There was another concept that was kind of important in free soil. So definitely it would be about land from Mexico not having slavery on it. That would be part of it. But there was some other philosophy that was kind of involved. Okay, Jackie, you had kind of.
Was it that like slavery was a sin?
They actually are going to back away from that a little bit. So that might be Liberty Party, more second Great Awakening attitudes toward slavery, but the free slavery movement actually kind of backs away from the sinfulness. Not necessarily that they didn't believe it, but that's not what they play up anymore. Okay, what are they playing up?
That because Mexico abolished slavery, because maybe like that.
Okay, so definitely had to do with a law thing, and what UNF can have really hooked onto is the Wilmot Proviso. And the Wilmot Proviso was kind of the trigger of this movement. So there's a definite connection, but there was something more to it. Okay, so basically, in the free soil movement, the attitude is that slavery was bad for whites. Okay? And the reason why they argued that it was bad for whites was that it made it so that getting land to move into was expensive, difficult, when you're competing with the plantation owners. And so, in a weird way, it's taking Jefferson's ideas of an agricultural republic and basically saying that slavery was preventing that from happening because it made it difficult for families to buy a farm. Okay, does that make sense? Now, William Lloyd Garrison, one of our big radical anti-slavery people, he attacked this movement. He called it white manism. Okay, that it totally, yeah, okay, that it totally disregarded that slavery is just wrong. I mean, obviously wrong. And instead, it's not that slavery is wrong because it's wrong. It becomes slavery's wrong because it hurts white people, which was an odd take. Okay. Well, that and philosophically that makes sense, Alex. That as long as the ends was there, who cares about the rationale? And to kind of take your point, what do you think was embraced by more people? What do you think more people joined? An anti-slavery movement which was more religiously based, or an anti-slavery movement that was, oh my God, it's bad for you to have slavery? Okay, which one actually seemed to be getting more people into it? The latter. Okay, the latter seemed to bring more people into the cause. So spot on point. All right, so does everybody kind of have this this attitude of what the Free Soilers were? So this is where we're going to start today. We're going to start with this Free Soil movement and their effect on the election of 1848. So in 1848, there is now a political party known as the Free Soil Party. And this party, one of the major leaders in the state of New York was a guy by the name of John Van Buren. And John Van Buren is the son of Martin Van Buren. And when he's got this upstart party, he realized that his party needed kind of a nationally known figure in order to in order to maybe really run somebody for the presidency. And so what John Van Buren did is he went to his dad. He said, "Daddy, will you run for president, please? Could you please run for president for my new party? Come on, Daddy, Daddy." And Daddy said yes. Okay. Now, oddly, what they did is by nominating Martin Van Buren. What's so odd? What had Martin Van Buren basically been one of the creators of? He had been one of the creators of the Democratic Party. And here he is, now basically working to practically kill it. Now they also Okay? They also are going to try and appeal to who we call the conscience Whigs. Who are the conscience Whigs? The anti-slavery Whigs. Okay, so anti-slavery Whigs, okay, and what they do to try and get the anti-slavery Whigs on their side is they run John Quincy Adams' son, Charles Francis Adams. So we have another member of the Adams family. There you go. All right, there you go. Anyway, their slogan, free soil, free speech, free labor, and free men. Now don't get confused when you talk about free labor here. It is not labor for free.
Freedom to.
Yes, it was freedom to provide the labor, or not. That's what free labor is in this context. Okay, if that makes sense. The Whigs are going to go with an old, tried and true method for winning elections. Find the greatest American hero and nominate him. Okay? Now, the Whigs just so happen to have in their party the guy who won the Battle of Buena Vista, the guy who helped win the war against Mexico, Zachary Taylor. He had kind of a foot in both camps of slavery, anti-slavery. He was a slave owner. But he also believed in rule of law. And that if the law says that we shan't have slavery in places like the Louisiana Territory and stuff like that, then he believed that we should not have slavery there. And so he's a law of the land, he likes to follow the law type of thing. The Democrats are going to run General Lewis Cass. Now, they had a sitting president, but James K. Polk, who had been basically working 18, 20-hour days, basically got ill. And the type of ill that he got is his body was not really holding on to the stuff that it ate very well. He is really too sick to run again. Plus, he had pledged that if he did his 4 things, he would not run again. And so it was pretty easy for him to basically stick with that last promise. I won't run. Lewis Cass was known for advocating, some people say even creating, an idea known as squatter sovereignty or popular sovereignty. So everybody kind of put a star next to this because this is going to be an important concept going forward. What popular sovereignty is basically it's a cure for one of the things that John C. Calhoun had complained about. John C. Calhoun believed that the federal government did not have the right to prevent slavery in new territories because of the Fifth Amendment. And so kind of the answer to that is, well, then who should decide whether there is going to be slavery or not? The territory should. So the federal government would not, like it did in the Northwest Territory when they passed the Northwest Ordinance before, back under the Articles of Confederation. They said that slavery would be banned from here. In the Missouri Compromise, they had banned slavery from up here in the Louisiana Territory. Well, what Lewis Cass says is that type of thing is no longer going to be done. We're no longer going to have the government prevent slavery. And instead, every territory would be able to decide for themselves whether or not they are going to be free or slave. Okay? Slavery, vote on it. Now, obviously, you can see a moral conundrum there. Whether or not you're voting something that is immoral into existence, that can cause a problem, right? But for Lewis Cass, he's basically going with the kind of one of the core principles of the Democratic Party. We vote. And if it wins, it wins. If it loses, it loses. That's how we'll do it. All right. The result, okay, is that many Northerners, particularly anti-slavery Northerners, will reject the principle of popular sovereignty. And they will vote for somebody who they knew in the past as a Democrat. They will vote for Martin Van Buren. They call these people the barn burners. Now, it was based on an old Dutch fairy tale. In this old Dutch fairy tale, there was a farmer who had rats in his barn. And he hated having rats in his barn. He got so angry about having rats in his barn that, you know how he got rid of those rats in his barn? He burned down his barn. And so what the joke here about why they call these people the barn burners is people like Martin Van Buren, they are so upset about slavery that they're basically going to destroy the Democratic Party. That they were so against something that rather than trying to fix it within, they were going to destroy the party entirely. With so many Northern Democrats voting for Martin Van Buren, the team that benefits is Team Whig, and Zachary Taylor becomes the second candidate from the Whig Party to win an election for the presidency. Okay, does that make sense? So one more time, third parties, what do? They don't win. But they, A, oftentimes prevent someone from winning. In this case, probably prevented Lewis Cass from winning. And B, they spotlight an issue. Okay? And what issue got spotlighted, kind of yet again here, is the institution of slavery. And so, obviously, is this something that is out there in American politics now? It is. And if you don't deal with it, okay, there could be consequences. Your party could end up losing. So, here's your new president, okay? Old, rough and ready, Zachary Taylor, okay? A little scary, isn't it? Well, almost immediately, something happens just as Zachary Taylor is being selected president. There's gold in Demdar Hills. Okay? Here in California, minor 49er, okay, they find that goldy stuff, and that makes people get all hyped, okay? Way hyped, okay? And what ends up happening is we get what we call the gold rush to California. Okay, so everybody's kind of familiar from your 4th grade, you know, field trip, about the gold rush thing, right? Okay. Well, what the gold rush does is it causes a sectional crisis. Now, it's kind of complicated. It's a complicated crisis. What basically happens is people flood into California. So many people flood in. Okay, what happens when you have way more people than expected? What happens to law and order? Okay, it breaks down. And so in California, they have overwhelmed the territorial government. There are so many people committing crimes that basically it's not Friday Night Lights football games, it's Friday night hangings. That the weekend's entertainment was hanging the most recent murderers being put on trial. Okay, and so things are basically out of control. President Taylor says that the best thing that California could do is basically become a state so that they could create the institutions necessary to deal with this burgeoning population. And so California will draft a non-slavery constitution. Now, by the way, don't just say, of course they did. It actually was a close call. In Southern California, there was a very unequal labor system being practiced on the various lands here. And many people wanted that practice to be protected, perhaps by becoming a slave state. However, in the North, you had so many minor 49ers that were coming in that were from the north, that were from northern states. They were able to vote in favor of a non-slavery constitution. Free statehood made the South panic. Because you see, since Texas entered the Union, 2 more free states had. And so what we had is a perfect balance. 15 free states, 15 slave states. And if you were to add 1 more free state, who would now have the advantage in the Senate? Who already had the advantage in the House of Representatives? The North. And so what basically the South starts to think is, oh my gosh, if things keep continuing this way, then yeah, the balance could be gone. And remember, things like the Wilmot Proviso, it had passed in the House of Representatives, but it was knocked down in the Senate. And so Southerners believed that the only thing really keeping them between federal laws that were anti-slavery was their power in the Senate. Anyway, when this balance was threatened, immediately there were people within the Senate who start to scream, if you allow California in, we're going to secede from the Union. Now, these people were known as the fire eaters, and the fire eaters were basically breathing fire. Okay, we'll see. No, don't do that. You don't do that. We're gonna leave. Okay. John C. Calhoun says, chill everybody, I have a simple solution. You see, this is what we'll do. We'll amend the Constitution so that we'll have 2 presidents. One from the North, one from the South. Each APUSH with veto power, and that will keep the sectional balance forever. Are you with me?
It was separated.
Okay.
Jokes.
That was his true belief of how you could solve the crisis. Okay? Meanwhile, in the North, you have a group we sometimes call the Young Guard. The Old Guard were people like Henry Clay and Daniel Webster who were saying, okay, let's compromise, we can work things out, chill. The Young Guard are basically saying, we're done with chilling. Okay? You know, it's better to have the union purified, get rid of the slavery, rather than patched and preserved. I would rather live in a union without slavery, even if it didn't include the South, than live in a nation that still permitted slavery. Now, is that a moderate soft stance?
No.
Okay? These are radicals. And one of these radicals is a guy by the name of William Seward. Okay, William Seward. And he basically brought in what he called higher law. This is the higher law principle. Okay? You can't do things like popular sovereignty because that is voting on something that you can't vote on. You can't vote on enslaving people because enslaving people is wrong. You just don't do it. Some laws cannot be made because they violate higher law. It's wrong. And we can't continue to kowtow to these plantation owners that are allowing us to continue with slavery. Okay, so do you see in there, is this, are we getting along? There's a lot of people hugging and stuff here. Okay, so this okay. So this is truly a crisis. Well, President Taylor makes the situation worse by basically saying that he would veto anything that prevented California from becoming a state. Okay? Because California had done it right. Had they done anything wrong in creating themselves a free state constitution? Did they do anything wrong? No. So since they didn't do anything wrong, should we be sitting here arguing over whether or not they are free or slave if they indeed just said they want to come in as a free state? He also said that rumor has it New Mexico is on its way to coming in, and guess what type of state they want to become? Free. And so, if you're someone who believes in sectional balance, it's done. We don't have it anymore. You need to accept it. It's no longer a thing. Get used to it. And so now, obviously, you've got a serious thing. You've got Fire Eater saying, "Secede!" You've got John C. Calhoun saying, "Let's have two presidents!" You have Young Guard Whig saying, "I don't care if you leave! Go ahead, don't let the door hit you on the way out!" This is messy stuff. Okay? And so who are you going to call in a crisis like this? You think Henry Clay. Other people think Ghostbusters. I'm going
Abe Lincoln.
Abe Lincoln is not quite here yet, though I did wear my Abe Lincoln button today with his, knowing that he's on his way. All right? Well, it is Henry Clay. Okay, so there's Henry Clay addressing the Senate. And Henry Clay, who is now 73, all right? right? So Henry Clay is coming in. He's going to give us one last compromise. Okay? The last compromise of Henry Clay. All right? Y'all ready for it? Okay. Good. Henry Clay hasn't died.
He's still
Okay? Yeah. Big. The bill he put together is he basically created a huge take it or leave it law. Okay? And basically said, South, you're going to accept the things you don't like, take it or leave it. North, you're going to accept the things you don't like, take it or leave it. But there's something in here for both of you. So vote on it. And it failed. Henry Clay failed. But also in the Senate was a senator from Illinois, not that senator from Illinois, because he actually never was a senator from Illinois. His name is Stephen Douglas. And what Stephen Douglas basically figures out is something that Henry Clay missed. Henry Clay created one big bill, and he invited everybody to take it or leave it. What Stephen Douglas simply does is he breaks the bill into little parts, and he markets them to the respective constituencies. It would go something like this. He would take the things that are pro-South and go to the South. Hey, y'all, this is pro-South. Y'all like these things, right? So y'all going to vote for these things that are pro-South? Of course you are, because they're pro-South. Then he goes to the compromise-minded people in the North, and he says, hello, compromise-minded people in the South. Y'all have to vote for these things if we're going to keep the country together. And so basically what he creates is, for those pro-Southern things, a South pro-compromise North coalition. Then he takes the pro-Northern things. And he says, these are the pro-Northern things. So North, y'all gonna vote for these things, right? Of course you are. And then he goes to the pro-compromise people in the South. I know these things favor the North, but you gotta vote for them if you want to keep the Union together. Do y'all see what he did there? Different constituencies passed the two parts of the compromise. Okay? For the pro-South, it was South and Northern compromisers. For the Northern things, it was the North and pro-compromise people in the South. It was fairly ingenious. The kicker, however, is Daniel Webster. Still, many people were swayed by the young guard who were saying, let him leave. And on the 7th of March, Daniel Webster gives the most beautiful speech about preserving the Union ever given. Okay. It brought people to tears. And it was after his speech in which he tells Northerners that there is a really bad thing in this law. There is something that is horrible. It is bad, but we got to do it anyway. We need to accept a more stricter, more strict fugitive slave law if we're going to keep the South in the Union. You got to do this. And people followed Daniel Webster. Up until this point, he had been one of the stronger voices of abolition in the United States Senate. But when he gave this speech, compromise happens. However, you still have the problem, okay, that the president did not necessarily want any strings attached to California entering the Union. And he was still talking about possibly vetoing this bill. But it was a really hot day in Washington, D.C. And there was a huge outdoor festival which the president attended. And it was so hot that he just kept eating all these cherries. Oh, they were beautiful, just the most beautiful cherries you ever did see. And then he'd drink some milk and he'd eat some cherries and he ate some milk and he'd drink some cherries or whatever, okay? And the poor president, he gets sick, okay? And the solution the doctors felt was to start bleeding him, and giving him quinine. Okay, so they give him quinine, they bleed him, they give him quinine, they bleed him, and shocker above shockers, the president dies. Okay, yes.
We're talking about Taylor, right?
So you're talking about Taylor. Okay. Taylor dies making Millard Fillmore, okay? Millard Fillmore, President of the United States. And Millard Fillmore is all about to compromise, okay? He signs it. So, your story here, you gotta make sure if you're ever elected president, you do not want to be elected as a Whig. Okay? Because there were only 2 Whigs ever elected president of the United States. Both of them were former generals, and both of them died in office. Okay. So here's the compromise, just so you can get the details. For the North, California enters as a free state. Disputed land in Texas, that's all this land here, is given to New Mexico, okay, for $10 million. And then finally, slave sales are abolished in the District of Columbia. Doesn't mean slavery, but slave sales. You can no longer buy or sell slaves in the District of Columbia. For the South. For the South, they get placed into law the idea of popular sovereignty. It shall become the written law of the land that these territories taken from Mexico, okay, Utah and New Mexico, which would end up being like 4 or 5 states, okay, would vote as to whether or not they would have slavery or not. Popular sovereignty. Slavery, vote on it. Okay? Secondly, the thing that Daniel Webster asked Northerners to vote in favor of, a more stringent, strict is another word for stringent, okay? A more strict fugitive slave law. So if you look at the map, basically this is how things were. Green were places that were free or on their way to becoming free. Yellow are areas in which they were going to vote on the institution of slavery. Orange were slave territories or slave states. Okay. Does everybody have this kind of down? Of these things, the one I want to talk about a little bit is that fugitive slave law. So this is the fugitive law, slave law of 1850. Basically, what would happen is that if somebody were a fleeing slave, or actually let me put it this way, somebody is accused of being a fleeing slave. Okay, so everybody with me on this? Anybody who is accused of being a fleeing slave, that could mean, by the way, somebody who was free, born free. But if they were accused of being a fleeing slave, immediately they would lose their ability to testify on their own behalf. So basically, just think about this. The trigger. Okay, I'm accused of being a runaway slave. I can no longer talk. I can no longer put up a verbal defense on my own behalf. I have lost the ability to legally defend myself. Secondly, no jury trial. Okay? It's not going to be a jury that decides whether or not this accusation is true or not. Instead, it would be a commissioner, just a paid federal official who would be sitting up and hearing the evidence, but not my evidence, because I can't talk. But instead, whose evidence is this commissioner listening to? My accuser. Then, if, okay, I, the commissioner, decide that this person who is accused to be a runaway slave is actually not a runaway slave, I am paid $5 for hearing the case. But if I decide that the person is a slave, I get $10. Do y'all see what happened there? Okay? A, the person accused of being a runaway slave cannot say anything. B, the commissioner who hears the case gets paid more if the commissioner, who's got sole discretion in the matter, decides that person is a runaway slave. Got it? Oh wait, there's more. If, Jules was really cool and she came in to try and speak on my behalf, okay? If the commissioner felt that her coming in and speaking on my behalf was aiding me as an escaped slave, she could be thrown in jail or fined. So you try and help somebody who is maybe not even a runaway slave, but is found to be a runaway slave by a U.S. commissioner who's got sole discretion in the matter. You can be thrown in jail or charged money. Can you see why some people thought this law should ought to not pass? You got me? All right, so kind of chew on this for a moment, okay? Sum up the North-South relationship after the Compromise of 1850. What you think's going on here now, okay? sentence you're writing. And then to your White House, really quick, 1 minute. Just check with them.
They don't like that they have to, and they hate what they
Okay, so thank your White House for their fabulous, wonderful insights. Choose any number but 37 because there's no 37. 34. Okay, so 34. 34. Let's do that. What do you think? You didn't get anything? So nothing, any sort of feeling? Did you? So then I'll just kind of go. You can go either or. Do you think it's things are going well, or do you think things are starting to get worse right now? Okay, so they're getting a little worse. Okay, so now choose anything but 34 or 37. 7. Okay, so 7 is ding 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 ding. Jonathan, what are your thoughts?
So, I think it was they did a temporary piece, but it could break it in damage. And they did make compromises, and I see it as bandages to the relationship, but it could break any
I really like this one. Okay, so any what? 7, 34, 37.
let's do
24. Okay, I'll learn who these people, what number of people are by some point, but let's see. Nicole, what are your thoughts? Anything to add? So, basically, we are now going to see the end of what we call the second two-party system. So, two-party system number 1 was the Federalists versus the Republicans. Two-party system, the two-party system number 2 is the Whigs or National Republicans versus the Democrats or the Democratic Republicans. Okay, so we're going to see this system collapse due to the troubles which you guys have now spotted. First of all, we see resistance to the Fugitive Slave Act. So resistance means are people completely in favor of it or what? Yeah.
Probably like stories of individual things that come out.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, people are going to be talking up. Well, wait a minute. So this isn't fair. People are going to spot that there is an injustice. Okay? And the thing is, this injustice is no longer far away. Oh, there's slavery way down there. Injustice. Where is the injustice now? Where could it be? It's in the north. It could be anywhere.
Doesn't it like
Yeah.
essentially take away the rights of all free African Americans in the north? But we shouldn't be accused of it.
Essentially,
It's like a witch hunt.
it can create that. It has turned any North America, any African American could now be accused, and they would lose their ability to their rights. And so, basically in the North, states start to pass what were known as personal liberty laws. So even if federal law says that somebody accused of being a slave does not get a jury trial, northern states say, that's not what we're doing here. We will have actual jury trials if somebody is accused. And so again, what was the on what basis would northern states say that they have this power to override federal law? It's states' rights. It's like you said states' rights before. Well, here's states' rights right back at you, South. South, we can play that game too. Federal law says this. Well, we believe that. Take that. Secondly, we see the publication of Uncle Tom's Cabin. She wrote this book in this charged atmosphere of the fugitive slave law. And what she's doing is painting this picture of slavery, okay, right when it affected not necessarily somebody so far away in Georgia, but somebody who might live next door. It basically is taking the issue of slavery and making it up close and personal, because it no longer just affects people so very far away. It could affect somebody you actually know. We basically credit this book with sparking a huge discussion about race and slavery in the United States. And also, by the way, sparked the discussion abroad. Later, when there was this thing called the Civil War, Britain and France, their populations had a tendency to be anti-South because of Uncle Tom's Cabin. Now, here's the thing, is that in realpolitik, what was better for Britain and France in the contest of nations was a weaker United States. But Britain and France saw that their populations favored the North because of their knowledge of the Southern institution of slavery, largely provided by Uncle Tom's Cabin. Huge, huge, huge influence of one book. Well, what happens in this new charged atmosphere is the Whig Party is going to disintegrate. Nice word, disintegrate. When we say disintegrate, does that mean, well, what's happening to this Whig Party? It's disintegrating, yay! Okay, is it just like kind of a slight little division-y thing? It's basically vaporizing, okay? In 1852, the Democrats are going to nominate a guy by the name of Franklin Pierce. He is from the North. He is from way north. He is from New Hampshire. Okay? Live free or die. Oddly, live free or die, New Hampshire. Franklin Pierce was a pro-Southern Northerner. John C. Calhoun had a nickname for people who were pro-Southern Northerners. He called them dough-faces. And it's kind of a joke, because these are people he actually wanted in office in the North. But his joke about them is that they were dough-faces because everybody take a piece of dough. You can mold it and make it do whatever you want. A dough face. You can mold it, you can make it do whatever you want. This is John C. Calhoun saying, yeah, this is what you shall do, Mr. Pierce. He is also publicly in favor of the Compromise of 1850. Why? He believed that this is the only thing that is holding the Democratic Party together. That remember the deal. Remember the common man deal of the Democratic Party. Well, this is holding to the deal. This is, let's stick to what made the Democratic Party the power party. You look the other way regarding slavery. And then we win. The Whigs will run another general from the Mexican War. But his view is a very kind of tepid thing. He says compromise is good. So you're in favor of the Compromise of 1850 and the Fugitive Slave Law? I didn't say that. I just said it's good to compromise. He's trying to have it both ways. And because of this kind of tepid support of the Compromise of 1850, the Whig Party was split. Whigs in the South voted Democratic. Conscience Whigs voted in favor of Daniel Webster despite the fact he was already dead. In other words, if you were very, very, very anti-slavery, you did not trust, okay, a living Winfield Scott as much as you trusted a dead Daniel Webster, okay, who oddly had told us to vote in favor of the thing to begin with. The result of the election is that since the Whig Party is disintegrating, Pierce wins in a landslide. Bye-bye, Whigs. Isn't it awesome? I just stuck it over there in the corner. I didn't draw your attention to it, but Chris just spotted the slogan. Did you ever see the Democrat slogan in 52? Polk Chin 44, Pearson 52. Franklin Pierce, as president, is another expansionist like Polk was. Both of them are basically recognized to be pro-slavery expansionists. For Pierce, what he was trying to do was deal with a new problem. California is a state, but it is not connected to the rest of the United States. You have a state here, you have a state here, then woo, California. And so what people are trying to do is think of how can we make California closer? Build a railroad. Now obviously, as soon as you say build a railroad and you already have a north-south argument, Northerners are saying, let's build it in the north. And Southerners are going to say, let's build it in the south. Pierce favored the southern route because he's pro-southern. He is going to see that the best route to go from Texas to California was to avoid the Sierra Nevada mountains. The only way you could avoid the Sierra Nevada mountains was to go down into Mexico. And so, in interest to try and get a southern route for the railroads, the United States will purchase from Mexico the land known as the Gadsden Purchase, which is basically meant to try and give as flat a possible route for a possible southern railroad route. Ironically, even though Pierce was in favor of getting the land for the railroad, he didn't believe the federal government should build it. Okay?
What is he supposed to do?
And since he was not willing to use the public funds to build the railroad, it didn't get built. Okay? The other thing that we attribute to Franklin Pierce as a Southern expansionist was that now that most of the land has been kind of taken up and divided as to whose territory it might be, expansionist Southerners start to look at what other possible slave territory could we add to the United States, and the answer became Cuba. Cuba became the let's add Cuba. So what Pierce will do is he will tell his diplomats in Europe to come up with a means of the United States acquiring Cuba. And these diplomats will create what becomes known as the Ostend Manifesto, or a plan for the United States to get Cuba. The plan went something like this. The United States would offer millions, like $20 million, to Spain. And then tell Spain, you better take the $20 million, or else we will just take Cuba from you, because Cuba is located at the mouth of the Mississippi River, and it is in our defensive interests to take it. Now, obviously, we have some geography problems here. Okay? But you can see kind of how desperate it sounds, right? The Free Soil Press gets hold of this plan, and they're the ones who add the word manifesto to it. Think about it this way. You add the word manifesto to anything, and it becomes a little bit more nefarious, right? Everybody think butterflies. Now make it the Butterfly Manifesto. Now all of a sudden you're scared of butterflies, aren't you? Okay? So the press gets hold of this, and we basically start to think of Franklin Pierce as this out-of-control Southern expansionist. Got it? In 1854, the North will come up with its plan for a railroad to California. It was a plan that was proposed by Stephen Douglas, the guy who had basically fixed Henry Clay's compromise, the Compromise of 1850, to make it so it could happen. Okay? Stephen Douglas wanted to build a railroad through the Nebraska Territory. The problem is the South refused to allow Nebraska to organize, because if it started to organize, what type of state would it have to be?
Free.
Would have to be free since it was in the old Louisiana territory. And so they're already losing in the game of balance. Do they want to lose more in the game of balance? So they say no. So what Stephen Douglas has to do is he's got to sweeten the pot. He's got to do something to make it so that the South would readily agree to allowing the Nebraska territory to be organized. So he proposed carving the Nebraska territory into now two territories, Nebraska and Kansas. And the question of slavery would now be answered via popular sovereignty. So you took what was already the established law. The established law was the Missouri Compromise said that there would be no slavery north of the 3630 line, north parallel. And you repeal it. And in its place, you would make it, it's now going to be popular sovereignty for the territories to vote for your slave. Now immediately, the whispers began. Why did he divide it into two territories? And that's what people thought. Now, by the way, Stephen Douglas never said this. He never said, it is my intention that one of these shall be free and the other shall be slave. But the fact that he divided it into two gave that impression. And so Southerners who look at Kansas, and Kansas is equal with what state? And what is and Missouri was what type of state? And so naturally, what kind of state could Kansas become? And so the very possibility, though never promised by Stephen Douglas, the possibility of getting a slave state where they could not have had a slave state before allows, okay, Southerners to support this bill. The North, on the other hand, people start going nuts. We know that there were at least 1,600 petitions to Congress saying, do not, do not, do not, do not, do not, do not, do not vote in favor of repealing the Missouri Compromise. Do not do it. Don't. Stop. Step away. Please. Some said those. It passes anyway. Why do you think it passes? What motive? What northern motive is driving the railroad? And railroad equals what? Dumb money. And so the very possibility of being able to get this railroad when they couldn't get it before made it so that Northerners, or many Northerners, joined the South and voted yes. If the election of 1852 did not kill the Whig Party, this did. If there was any hope of a zombie Whig Party to rise, this was the stake in it. The Kansas-Nebraska Act equals the end of the Whig Party. from the ashes of the Whig Party, we get a new party created known as the Republicans. It is an homage to the old Republican Party of Thomas Jefferson. It is not the same party, but it does take its name. The party is really a smorgasbord of various parties. You had anti-slavery Democrats who were probably members of the Free Soil Party before. Their main reason for joining is they believed that the South had become too powerful, that Southerners had disproportionate power in the Union, that here they were, a region which had less population, yet most of the early presidents came from the South. The Senate was dominated by the South. You couldn't get any law passed without the permission of the South. They called it the slavocracy. Okay? And they believed that they needed to have a counterweight to it. Additionally, you had the conscience Whigs, who were anti-slavery on its wrong grounds. And finally, what was left of the Free Soil and Liberty parties join in. It was not the only party that emerged from this wreckage, however. A second party also emerged, known as the American Party. Do you guys remember back last unit when we talked about immigration? And we talked about Irish and German immigration, and there was a large amount of anti-Irish and German immigration. Do you guys remember when that was? That was the 1840s and 1850s. So at the very same time that you have these issues surrounding slavery emerging in the United States, you also had that anti-immigrant movement. And so, in answer to that anti-immigrant sentiment, we also saw the creation of the anti-immigrant American Party. Their slogan, America is for Americans. I kid you not. Okay. All right, so, messy, messy, messy. Messy, messy, messy. Messy, messy, messy. Popsov. When I say Popsov, what is it? Popular sovereignty. Okay? Popular sovereignty is going to lead to fraudulent elections in Kansas. What basically happened is, everybody take a look at okay, here is the border of Missouri, and that place that just won the World Series. Okay? This is a fairly large city. This is kind of empty territory land. And what ends up happening is when it came time to create a territory government, people from Kansas City crossed over into the border of Kansas, and they are going to they will vote in the Kansas elections. So basically, people from Missouri were fraudulently voting in Kansas, and they will elect a pro-slavery territorial government. Now, the territorial governor knew about it, and he sent a letter to President Pierce, and he says to President Pierce, "Oh my God, fraud, fraud, we need to do something about it, Mr. President." And when the president basically gets the letter, he says, "Oh, you think there was fraud? You're fired." Which side was he on? Okay. Anyway. We will end up with bad blood. Both sides are now basically thinking we are right. Pro-slavery people think they are the government because they won the election. Anti-slavery people are saying, you cheated, cheaters! And so, some pro-slavery guys ride into the free soil town of Lawrence, Kansas, and they shoot it up. Okay? Well, not to be outdone. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce to you John Brown. Now, John Brown is anti-slavery. Oh, is he anti-slavery? Okay. He believes that he was called upon by God to do something about slavery in America. And so he will move to the Kansas territory with some of his 20 children. And he will create an anti-slavery army. He will attack a pro-slavery town known as Potawatomi Creek. And he will not only shoot, but he will have his guys hack up into little pieces 5 pro-slavery, guys. Okay, they will not practice slavery in the next life. Okay. Anyway, okay. Basically, this leads to a 4-month civil war. For 4 months, you're going to have pro-slavery forces attacking anti-slavery forces in Kansas. We know of at least 200 people who were killed. In effect, this is the dress rehearsal for the American Civil War. While this is happening, it will also affect what was going on in Congress. Okay? Yeah! Okay? In Congress, you have, okay? Okay? So, you have a guy by the name of William Sumner, okay? And Sumner is going to give a speech in which he says, okay, la 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 la. All right. Okay. The senator from South Carolina has read many books of chivalry and believes himself a chivalrous knight with sentiments of honor and courage. Of course, he has chosen a mistress to whom he has made his vows. And though who ugly to others is always lovely to him, though polluted in the sight of the world is always chaste in his sight. I mean, of course, that harlot slavery. Now, he rips into this pro-slavery senator by the name of Andrew Butler. And Andrew Butler had a cousin in the House of Representatives. And when the cousin hears about the insults made to his kinfolk, okay? He bursts into the Senate chamber, finds Senator Sumner, pounces on him with his cane, and starts beating him, okay? Basically, everybody else just kind of stands back while this guy so much bludgeons Senator Sumner that he's going to basically have to leave on a sabbatical for the next 2 years to recover. Okay? Yeah.
Doesn't, like, when he comes back, doesn't he, like, give like, a speech that, like, brings everyone to tears about how, like slavery is, like, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, what was really what happened even before he came back was that people would give speeches, okay, and whenever they were denouncing slavery, they always managed to get to Senator Sumner's empty desk to stand, to give a little added emphasis. Why isn't he there?
What happened to the guy who beat him up?
The guy who beat him up was voted and removed out of the House of Representatives as a punishment. But then the people of South Carolina voted him right back in again. Okay? Okay? So what you think? How's popular sovereignty working for y'all? Evaluate. Give it a scale, a grade of A to F. Okay? Okay? Give it a grade of A to F with a comment. Okay? And I'm sure that popular sovereignty is just not a pleasure to have in class. Okay? Grade popular sovereignty A to F as an effective answer to the slavery problem. Okay. 30 more seconds.